I've always believed life doesn't give you anything you can't handle. But it sure does like to test your limits. That's what I was thinking as I packed up the last of my boxes in the small sunlit apartment I'd called home for nearly a decade. You're really doing it, huh? Claire, big city, big job. My neighbor, Tom asked as he leaned against my open door, sipping from a can of beer. Yeah, Tom, it's finally happening, I replied, taping up another box. Can't say I'm not a bit nervous, though. Ah, you'll do fine. You're tough as nails. Tom chuckled, his voice gruff with years of smoking and late-night drinks. Just don't forget us little people when you're climbing that corporate ladder. I smiled, wiping my hands on my jeans. I could never forget you, Tom. You know too many of my secrets. We both laughed, the sound echoing in the now empty room. It felt strange to leave this place. It wasn't just the apartment, but everything it represented. My struggles, my wins, and the endless nights of studying while working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. After Tom left, I made one last call to the one person who mattered most. Hey Mom, it's me. Just wanted to check in before I hit the road. Claire, darling, are you all packed? Did you eat something? My mother's voice was always filled with concern. Yeah, Mom, all packed, and I grabbed a sandwich. Don't worry. Oh, good. I wish I could be there to help. Are you sure this is what you want, Claire? It's such a big change. I knew this move scared her since it had always been just the 2 of us. Any change felt monumental. It's a great opportunity, Mom. I can't pass it up. I promise I'll visit soon, okay? There was a pause, the line crackling slightly. I know, honey. I'm proud of you. Just be careful, okay? Hanging up, I took a deep breath, looking around the bare room once more. It wasn't just a new job. This was a fresh start, a chance to prove myself and maybe, just maybe, make my mom proud. Driving to the new city was a blur of highway lines and radio static. When I arrived, the new branch office was imposing, all sleek glass and sharp angles, so different from the cozy, cluttered spaces I was used to. On my first day, nerves jittery and palms sweaty, I pushed through the revolving doors and into the lobby. I must have looked lost because a guy in a neatly pressed suit stopped in front of me, a friendly smile on his face. You must be Claire. I'm David. I'll be helping you get settled in, he said, extending his hand. Taking it, I was surprised by his firm grip. Thanks, I appreciate it. It's a bit overwhelming. Stick with me, and you'll be fine, David assured me with a nod. Let's start by introducing you to the team, and then I'll show you your new office. As we walked through the corridors, his easy manner helped calm my nerves. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe I could really make this work. First rule of the game here, David said as we approached a set of large double doors. Never let them see you sweat. I laughed, more at ease than I've been all morning. Got it. No sweating. Exactly. You'll fit right in. Settling into the new job and city was like learning to dance to a completely new rhythm. The work was tougher, the stakes higher, and the pace relentless. But David was there every step of the way, showing me the ropes without making me feel like a total noob. Okay, so everyone uses this software here. It's not rocket science, but it might as well be if you've never seen it before, David explained as we sat in my new stark office. He leaned over my desk, his fingers flying over the keyboard to demonstrate. I've used something similar in my last job, I said, trying to keep up. Good, you're not starting from scratch then, David said with a grin. You'll catch on quick. You always do. It wasn't just his knowledge that helped. It was his attitude. He didn't patronize or hover. Instead, he was straightforward and, to my relief, had a sense of humor that made the long hours easier. Hey Claire, how about we grab a coffee? You look like you need a caffeine hit, David suggested one particularly grueling afternoon. I was born needing a caffeine hit, I quipped, standing to stretch my legs. At the coffee shop, the casual setting helped us step away from our roles at work. David shared stories about growing up in the city, and I found myself opening up about my small-town life and all the quirks that came with it. The more time we spent together, both in and out of work, the more I appreciated his company. He was easy to be around, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could be myself. One evening after work, as we walked back to the office from a nearby diner, David stopped and looked at me seriously. "Claire, I've been thinking. We're great partners at work, right?" I nodded, wondering where this was going. "So, what if we think about making this a regular thing? Like, not just as colleagues or coffee buddies?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck nervously. "You mean like a date?" I asked, trying not to sound too surprised. "Yeah, exactly, a date. I like you, Claire, and I think we could be good together," he said, looking me straight in the eyes. I took a moment, considering. David was great. We got along, shared a lot of laughs, and he had already seen me at my worst, surviving on coffee and zero sleep. Plus, I was definitely interested. "Okay, yeah, let's try a date," I smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. "Great, it's a date then. How about this Friday? Dinner at that Italian place you said you loved," he suggested with a hopeful look. "It's a plan. It's a date," I confirmed, and we both grinned, a little relieved. From that day on, things changed between us, but in a good way. We still worked together, still had our coffee runs, but now there was an added layer to our relationship, something that felt both thrilling and terrifying. 2 years slipped by quicker than I'd ever imagined. David and I got married, settling into a rhythm of life together that felt as natural as breathing. We were happy, genuinely so, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. I talked to my mom on the phone often, but only made it back home for the holidays. Each call, I noticed something was a bit off. Mom seemed more forgetful, her thoughts a bit scattered. It worried me. I even brought up the idea of her moving in with us or considering a nursing home, but she was adamant. "No, Claire, I'm fine on my own. Don't fuss over me," she'd say stubbornly, brushing off my concerns. As for my new in-laws, our relationship remained cool, distant even. They never really warmed up to me, treating me with a polite indifference that was hard to crack. At family gatherings, I often felt more like an outsider than a daughter-in-law. It was uncomfortable, but David was a solid presence by my side, always quick to divert the conversation or lighten the mood. Life had settled into a comfortable routine, with David and I juggling work and home, while my worries about Mom's health simmered on the back burner. Then Margaret, my mother-in-law, started becoming more involved in our lives, and not in a way I appreciated. It started innocently enough, a phone call here and there, asking if we could pick up some groceries for her since we were already out shopping. "Hey Claire, could you grab me some of that bread I like? Oh, and maybe some of that fancy cheese you got last time. I'll pay you back, promise," she'd say, her voice always upbeat but somehow feeling forced. "Sure, Margaret, no problem," I'd reply, trying to keep the peace and make an effort. But the grocery lists grew longer, and the promises to pay back soon just stopped coming. One day, after I came home tired from a long day at work, I found David in the kitchen sorting through a pile of receipts. "What's all this?" I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. "It's from my mom," David said, not looking up. "Your mom? What do you mean?" I frowned, picking up a receipt. It was for a dinner at a high-end restaurant, a dinner I didn't attend. "She's been asking me to pay for a lot of stuff. She'd asked you too, hasn't she?" David asked, rubbing his temples. "Yes, she has," I admitted, feeling a knot in my stomach. "I thought it was just now and then. How bad is it?" David spread the receipts on the counter, showing dinners, groceries, and even some clothes. "It's adding up, Claire. This isn't just a few favors. It's becoming a regular thing." The next day, I decided to confront Margaret about it. I called her, trying to keep my voice calm. Margaret, we need to talk about the money, I began. It's getting a bit out of hand. Oh, Claire, I thought you didn't mind. We're family, after all. Margaret's voice was light, but there was a sharpness to it that I hadn't noticed before. I don't mind helping, Margaret, but this is more than helping. It's like we're your personal ATM, I said, the words harsher than I intended. There was a pause, and then Margaret laughed, a short, humorless sound. Well, I didn't realize you were keeping tabs. I'll make sure not to bother you anymore. The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at my phone in confusion. That night, I told David about the conversation. He was quiet for a long time, then he took my hand. I'm sorry, Claire. I should have noticed sooner. I'll talk to her. After the money talk with Margaret, things between us and David's parents turned frosty. They stopped asking for money, but the damage to our relationship was done. It was like walking on eggshells whenever we met, each conversation strained and filled with polite, hollow words. It was during my birthday dinner when the tension truly surfaced. We had invited both sets of parents to celebrate, hoping to smooth things over with a nice meal at our place. David's parents arrived last, and right off the bat, things felt off. Margaret and Richard walked in without a gift, which wasn't a big deal to me, but the way they mentioned it struck a nerve. We didn't bring a present. After all, David is the best gift we could have ever given you, Margaret said with a tight smile as they entered. I forced a smile, trying to keep the evening light. Well, I'm lucky to have him, I replied, guiding them into the living room where drinks were set up. Throughout dinner, the conversation veered from trivial to tense. Margaret was particularly inquisitive that night, her questions sharp and probing. So, Claire, how's your mother doing? Still living in that little house of hers? She'd asked, stirring her drink casually. Yeah, she's fine. Thanks for asking. She loves that place, wouldn't dream of leaving it, I answered, trying not to let on how much her interest bothered me. And her health. Must be tough getting older without someone to look after her. Margaret pressed on, her eyes narrowing slightly. She manages well enough. We talk every day, I said firmly, hoping she'd drop the subject. Richard chimed in then, his tone unusually harsh. Seems risky at her age. Being all alone. You sure that's wise? I glanced at David, who looked as uncomfortable as I felt. We've discussed other options, but she's quite independent. Thanks for your concern, though, he interjected, trying to steer the conversation elsewhere. The rest of the evening passed with a palpable undercurrent of tension. After the meal, while we were having dessert, Margaret continued her interrogation under the guise of casual conversation. Must be hard balancing a career and worrying about an aging parent, she redivided, looking at me pointedly. It is, but it's nothing I can't handle, I said, my voice colder than I intended. We do what we have to do, right? Of course, dear, Margaret replied, her voice dripping with insincerity. Just make sure you're not biting off more than you can chew. The moment they left, the relief was tangible. David let out a deep breath, running his hands through his hair. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why they were acting like that, he apologized, looking genuinely upset. It's okay, David. It's not your fault, I assured him, though inside, my mind raced with anxiety. Why was Margaret so interested in my mom all of a sudden? What was she getting at? The phone rang early on a Saturday morning, slicing through the quiet like a siren in the night. Groggy and a bit annoyed, I fumbled for the phone on the nightstand, knocking over a glass of water in the process. Hello, I mumbled, still half asleep. Claire, honey, you have to come get me. They'd taken everything. I don't know what to do, my mom's voice came through, frantic and shaky. I sat up straight, instantly awake. Mom, slow down. What happened? Who took what? It's the house, Claire. The bank, they've sealed it off. I can't get any of my things. They said I owe them money, so much money. I don't understand, her voice cracked, and I could hear the fear in every word. My heart pounded. Okay, I'm coming. Just stay where you are. Where are you? I'm in the hospital. They brought me here last night. They thought I was having a stroke, but it was just my blood pressure. It shot right up, Claire. I was so scared. I'm getting the next flight out. David will come with me. We'll figure this out, I promise. Hanging up, I turned to find David already sitting up, concern etching his face. What's going on? He asked. It's my mom. Something terrible has happened. We need to go to her now, I said, throwing the covers off and starting to pack a bag with shaking hands. David was on his feet in an instant, pulling clothes from drawers without a word. We were a team, and right then, I'd never been more grateful for his support. The flight was a blur of worry and whispered plans. As soon as we landed, we raced to the hospital where my mom was staying. Seeing her in the hospital bed, pale and frightened, was like a punch to the gut. She looked so small, so vulnerable. Claire, oh thank God, she sobbed as I rushed to her side. I'm here, Mom. It's going to be okay, I soothed, holding her hand tightly. She clung to me, then looked over at David. Thank you for coming, both of you. I'm so sorry to drag you into this. It's no trouble, Evelyn. We're here to help, David reassured her, his voice steady. Once we had calmed her down, I gently prodded for more details. Mom, tell us exactly what happened. Start from the beginning. Taking a deep breath, she explained. A few months ago, someone called. They said they were from my bank and that I had an unpaid loan for your education. They said it was so much money, Claire. They told me it was $50,000. I didn't know what to do. My stomach twisted. But, Mom, you didn't take out any loan for my education. It was all scholarships and your hard work. I know, honey. I know that now, but they were so convincing. They knew where you went to school, when you graduated. I got scared. They said they could help me take out a loan to cover it, so I did. I didn't want to bother you with it. My fists clenched. What happened then? A week later, I got an email. It said I had won the lottery, $500,000. I thought it was a miracle. I thought I could pay off the loan and still have enough left over to finally retire comfortably. They said I just needed to pay some taxes on it first, $80,000. So, I took out another loan. Mom, no, I whispered, horror dawning on me. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, I was a fool. There was no lottery, Claire. It was all a scam. Now the bank has taken everything. I owe more than $150,000, including fines and penalties, and I don't have a penny to my name. Anger surged through me, hot and fierce. We'll get to the bottom of this, Mom. Whoever did this to you, we'll find them. David and I were shell-shocked. The phone calls, the emails, and the cascading deceit. It was all too much. But we were clear on our next step. We needed to report this. We drove to the local police station, the morning air feeling unusually crisp, as if it sensed the turmoil. At the station, we sat down with Detective Harris, a no-nonsense type who'd seen more scams than she could count. We explained everything, how my mom was duped into believing she owed a huge loan, how she thought she'd won the lottery, and every detail leading up to her financial ruin. Martinez listened, her expression growing tighter with each word. We'll start by tracing the phone numbers and the email address used in the scam. These guys mess up somewhere. They always do, she said, tapping away at her computer. A few intense days later, Martinez called us in. Her office felt colder than I remembered. We've made a breakthrough, she announced, her voice grim. The account where your mom sent the money, it's registered to a familiar name. David and I exchanged puzzled glances. Familiar? How? He asked. It's registered under your mother's name. Margaret, Martinez revealed, her eyes locked on David. The room spun. It couldn't be. But then I remembered my birthday dinner, how Margaret had prodded about my mom's finances, her health, her house. It made a chilling sense. David slammed his fist on the table. That's impossible. My mother couldn't do this. His voice broke, strained with disbelief and anger. I'm sorry, David. I know this is hard, but we've double-checked. She was behind the calls and the emails, Martinez said softly. The betrayal was palpable. David was torn, rage and shock battling within him. We need to confront her. We need to hear it from her, he said finally, his voice steely. As we arrived at his parents' house, I noticed a shiny new car in the driveway, and my stomach turned. They were living it up while my mom was drowning in despair and debt. We knocked, and Margaret opened the door, all smiles, acting like we were just there for a casual visit. David, Claire, what a surprise. Look at our new car. And next week, we're off on a cruise. David's face was like stone. Cut the crap, Mom. We know about the money. It's over. Margaret's smile faltered, her eyes darting between us. What money, dear? What are you talking about? David stepped into the house, his anger barely contained. The money you stole from Claire's mom. We know everything. At that, Margaret's face drained of color. She staggered back, leaning against the wall. David, please, you have to understand. We need it. It's too late for excuses. David cut her off. His father, Richard, had appeared by then, his expression weary. Richard tried to intervene, his voice shaky. David, we're your parents. We're old. Prison would destroy us. Please think about what you're doing. I couldn't hold back. Your age didn't stop you from scamming an old woman out of her home and her peace. Why should we consider your age now? Margaret started to sob, her hands trembling. Please, David, I'm your mother. Don't do this to us. David looked at them, his eyes cold and distant. The police are on their way. You did this to yourselves. The conversation was cut short by the sound of sirens as the police car pulled up. Richard and Margaret's demeanor shifted from pleading to resignation. They knew it was over. Officers entered the house, and after a brief exchange, handcuffed Margaret and Richard. They cried, begged for forgiveness as they were led out, but David and I just shook our heads. Forgiveness was too much to ask. The courtroom was packed on the day of the sentencing. As the judge declared a 2-year sentence for both Margaret and Richard, a murmur swept through the crowd. People who had once respected and known my in-laws were visibly shocked by the extent of their deception. It was a surreal moment to watch them being led away, knowing they had to sell their house to make restitution. After the trial, life slowly started to piece itself back together, but the scars remained. My mom had recovered physically, but she was still mentally shaken. The phone ringing would make her jump, a sad reminder of the trauma she endured. I took legal custody to ensure her well-being, which gave both of us some peace of mind. With the money Margaret and Richard were forced to pay, I managed to find a beautiful nursing home for Mom. It wasn't just any facility but a prestigious one right in our neighborhood. I made sure she had the best care and could maintain some independence within a supportive community. The first time we visited her new home, Mom was hesitant, but as she saw the gardens and the lively social rooms, her eyes lit up. It's lovely, Claire, she said, looking around with a cautious smile. It's the best, Mom. You deserve it. And look, it's just 5 minutes from our place. I'll be here all the time. I reassured her, squeezing her hand. She nodded, her smile growing more confident. I like that. Maybe I can get used to answering the phone again here, with all these nice people around. I laughed, relieved to see her finding comfort. You'll be running the place in no time, Mom. As the days turned into weeks, David and I found ourselves settling into a new routine. We were expecting our first child, a beacon of hope after a stormy period. The joy of impending parenthood brought us closer, and I often found myself marveling at how David stood by me through everything. His unwavering support was my rock. One quiet evening, as we sat in our living room, David wrapped an arm around me. How's your mom today? Settling in still? She's good at getting better at making friends, and she started a little garden project," I replied, resting my head against his shoulder. "That's great. She's strong, like her daughter," he said, kissing the top of my head gently. Our lives had changed irrevocably. There was no more contact with David's parents. That bridge was burned for good. Yet, in its ashes, we found the strength to rebuild. We focused on the future, our family, and all the love that remained unshaken by the past.
Babe, I've been thinking about going back to school once Mila starts kindergarten. I couldn't contain my excitement as I shared my dream with Ethan over dinner. His fork paused midway to his mouth, and he raised an eyebrow. "Really? And who's going to take care of Mila and the house while you're off playing student?" His condescending tone cut through me like a knife. "I thought we could work together to make it happen. You know how much this means to me." I tried to keep my voice steady, but the disappointment was palpable. Ethan scoffed. "Come on, Zara. You're a wife and mother now. It's time to grow up and focus on your real responsibilities." He resumed eating, dismissing my aspirations with a wave of his hand. Anger bubbled up inside me. Real responsibilities? Like supporting my husband's career while putting my own dreams on hold? I pushed my plate away, appetite vanishing. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "I provide for this family. The least you can do is be grateful and take care of things at home." "Grateful?" I laughed bitterly. "For what? For being treated like a servant in my own home?" Mila, sensing the tension, whimpered softly. I reached over to soothe her, but Ethan's voice stopped me cold. "Don't coddle her. She needs to learn that life isn't always fair." I stared at him in disbelief. "She's 4, Ethan. She needs love and support, not life lessons from a man who can't even appreciate his own wife." Ethan slammed his fist on the table, causing Mila to jump. "Watch your mouth, Zara. You're treading on thin ice." I stood up abruptly, scooping Mila into my arms. "I'm done with this conversation, and I'm done letting you control my life." I stormed out of the room, fighting back tears as Mila clung to me. Over the next few weeks, the tension in our home was palpable. Ethan's work trips became more frequent, leaving me alone to care for Mila and manage the household. I poured my frustrations into researching master's programs, determined to pursue my education despite Ethan's objections. One afternoon, while organizing Ethan's home office, I stumbled upon a hidden folder tucked away in his desk drawer. My hands trembled as I flipped it open, revealing divorce papers and intimate photos of Ethan with a younger woman. The world around me spun as the realization of his betrayal sank in. Rage consumed me, burning away the last shreds of love and respect I had for my husband. How could he do this to me, to our family? I clutched the evidence to my chest, tears streaming down my face. In that moment, I made a vow to myself. I would expose Ethan's true colors and make him pay for his deceit. As I sat on the floor of his office, surrounded by the remnants of our shattered marriage, a fierce determination took hold of me. I would no longer be the naive, submissive wife. It was time to take control of my life and secure a better future for Mila and myself, even if it meant destroying the man I once loved. With trembling hands, I tucked the incriminating evidence back into the folder, my mind reeling from the discovery of Ethan's betrayal. I knew I had to act quickly, but I needed more information. I couldn't confront him without a solid plan in place. I called my best friend Lila and poured out my heart to her. She listened patiently, her voice filled with a mix of anger and concern. "Zara, you need to protect yourself and Mila. You can't let him get away with this." "I know," I sighed, "but I don't even know where to start. I feel so lost." Lila's voice turned determined. "I have a friend who's a private investigator. He's discreet and thorough. I'll set up a meeting for you." 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from Jack, a seasoned PI with a no-nonsense demeanor. I handed him the folder, my voice shaking as I explained my situation. He leafed through the contents, his expression grim. "I'll dig into this Jade character and see what I can find. In the meantime, I suggest you start gathering more evidence. The more ammunition you have, the better." I nodded, a plan forming in my mind. "I have an idea. I'll need your help to execute it." That evening, while Ethan was on another work trip, I carefully planted a hidden camera in his office. It was a risk, but I needed concrete proof of his affair and any other illegal activities. Days turned into weeks as I waited for Jack's report, the camera silently recording Ethan's every move. When Jack finally called, his voice was filled with a mixture of disgust and satisfaction. "Zara, I've got what you need. Ethan's been embezzling company funds to finance his little getaways with Jade, and I've got video evidence of them in his office, discussing their plans to run away together." My heart raced as I processed the information. "Send me everything you have. It's time to confront him." Ethan returned home that evening, his demeanor cold and distant. I waited until Mila was asleep before I approached him in his office. He looked up from his laptop. Annoyance etched on his face. "What do you want, Zara?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "I know about Jade, Ethan, and I know about the money you've been stealing from your company." His eyes widened, then narrowed in anger. "You've been spying on me? How dare you?" I held up my phone, the video of him and Jade playing silently on the screen. "I have all the evidence I need. Did you really think you could get away with this?" Ethan's face contorted with rage. He stood up abruptly, his chair crashing to the floor. "You stupid bitch! You have no idea what you're messing with!" He lunged at me, his hands reaching for my throat. I stumbled backward, my back slamming against the wall. Mila, awakened by the commotion, appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. "Mommy?" Ethan froze, his grip loosening. I pushed him away, gasping for air. Mila ran to me, tears streaming down her face. "I hate you, Daddy!" "You hurt Mommy." Ethan stared at us, his expression a mix of shock and shame. Without a word, he turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I held Mila close, my own tears falling freely. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. I won't let him hurt us anymore." As I comforted my daughter, a fierce determination filled my heart. Ethan had shown his true colors, and now it was time to make him pay for his sins. I would use every piece of evidence I had to destroy him, just as he had destroyed our family. In the days following the confrontation, Ethan became increasingly distant and cold towards Mila and me. He spent long hours locked away in his office, only emerging for brief, tense meals. I knew he was planning his next move, and I had to stay one step ahead. I met with Lila at a quiet cafe, the weight of my secret hanging heavy between us. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand in support. "How are you holding up, Zara?" I shook my head, exhaustion etched on my face. "I'm barely keeping it together, Lila. I feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for Ethan to strike." Lila's eyes narrowed. "You need to keep gathering evidence. The more you have, the stronger your case will be." I nodded, pulling out my phone. "I've been recording his phone conversations with Jade. Listen to this." I pressed play, and Jade's voice filled the air, dripping with disdain. "When are you going to leave that pathetic excuse for a wife, Ethan? We could be so happy together, without her dragging us down." Ethan's reply was muffled, but the intent was clear. "Soon, baby. I just need to make sure she doesn't get a penny in the divorce. She doesn't deserve anything." Lila's face contorted with disgust. "What a snake. You need to take him down, Zara. Hard." I tucked my phone away, a plan forming in my mind. "I know exactly what I'm going to do, but I need you to promise me something, Lila." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Anything. If something happens to me, I need you to take care of Mila. Make sure she knows how much I love her." Lila's eyes widened. "Zara, don't talk like that. Nothing's going to happen to you." I smiled sadly. "I hope you're right, but I have to be prepared for anything." Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my revenge plan. I compiled a dossier of evidence against Ethan, from the hidden camera footage to the recordings of his conversations with Jade. I met with a lawyer who assured me that I had a strong case for full custody of Mila and a generous settlement. But I knew Ethan wouldn't go down without a fight. He started staying out late, coming home reeking of alcohol and perfume. He barely acknowledged Mila's presence, brushing past her as if she were a ghost. One night I confronted him as he stumbled through the door, his eyes bloodshot and his shirt askew. "Where have you been, Ethan?" He sneered at me, his words slurring together. "None of your damn business, Zara. I don't answer to you." I stepped closer, my voice low and dangerous. "You answer to your daughter, though. Or have you forgotten about her?" Ethan's face twisted with rage. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. "Don't you dare use Mila against me. You're the one who's tearing this family apart with your ridiculous fantasies of going back to school. I wrenched my arm away, my eyes blazing. No, Ethan, you're the one who tore this family apart the moment you decided to cheat on me with your assistant. He stared at me, his mouth agape. How did you? I smiled coldly. I know everything, Ethan, and soon everyone else will too. I turned to walk away, but Ethan's voice stopped me. You'll regret this, Zara. I'll make sure you never see Mila again. I looked back over my shoulder, my voice steady. You can try, Ethan, but I've got the truth on my side, and the truth always comes out in the end. As I walked away, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to fight for my daughter and my future. Ethan had underestimated me for the last time. The tension in our home had reached a boiling point. Ethan's anger simmered just beneath the surface, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. I walked on eggshells, trying to shield Mila from the worst of it, but I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came to a head. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. Ethan had been gone for days, claiming he was on a business trip. But I knew better. I had seen the charges on our credit card statement: expensive dinners, luxury hotels, and even a pair of diamond earrings that certainly weren't meant for me. When he finally walked through the door, I was waiting for him in the living room, Mila playing quietly at my feet. He barely glanced at us as he shrugged off his coat and tossed his keys on the table. We need to talk, Ethan, I said, my voice steady despite the fear churning in my gut. He looked at me then, his eyes cold and hard. I don't have time for your nagging, Zara. I've had a long day. I stood up, my hands clenched at my sides. I'm sure you have. Busy spending our money on your mistress, were you? Ethan's face twisted with rage. He took a step towards me, his voice low and menacing. You don't know what you're talking about, Zara. I suggest you drop it. But I couldn't drop it. Not anymore. I know everything, Ethan. The affair, the embezzlement, all of it. Did you really think you could keep it hidden forever? He lunged at me then, his hands wrapping around my throat. I gasped for air, my eyes wide with terror. Mila screamed, her little voice piercing the air. Daddy, stop! You're hurting Mommy. Ethan froze, his grip loosening. He stared at Mila, his face a mask of shock and shame. I pushed him away, coughing and sputtering as I tried to catch my breath. Mila ran to me, her arms wrapping around my legs. I hate you, Daddy, she sobbed, her face buried in my skirt. You're a bad man. Ethan stared at us, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, he turned and stumbled out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sank to the floor, gathering Mila in my arms. We cried together, our tears mingling on my shirt. I stroked her hair, whispering soothing words in her ear. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. I won't let him hurt us anymore. But even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. Ethan had shown his true colors, and there was no going back. I had to get Mila and myself out of this toxic situation before it was too late. The next few days were a blur of activity. I met with my lawyer, who helped me file for a restraining order against Ethan. I packed our bags, taking only the essentials. Mila clung to me, her eyes wide and fearful. Where are we going, Mommy? She asked, her voice small and uncertain. I kissed her forehead, trying to project a sense of calm I didn't feel. We're going on a little adventure, baby. Just you and me. Won't that be fun? She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She was too young to understand the gravity of the situation, but she knew something was wrong. As we drove away from the only home Mila had ever known, I felt a sense of both relief and dread. I knew I was doing the right thing, but I also knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. Ethan wouldn't let us go without a fight, and I had to be prepared for anything. But I also knew that I had the truth on my side, and the truth, as painful as it might be, would set us free in the end. Mila and I settled into our new life at the secret rental home, but the peace was short-lived. Ethan's behavior grew increasingly erratic, his anger and desperation palpable even from a distance. He bombarded me with phone calls and texts, alternating between pleading for forgiveness and hurling vicious insults. I did my best to shield Mila from the worst of it, but she could sense the tension in the air. She clung to me like a lifeline, her little face etched with worry. When can we go home, Mommy? She asked, her voice small and uncertain. I hugged her close, my heart breaking at the thought of all she had endured. This is our home now, baby. We're going to make a fresh start, just you and me. But even as I said the words, I knew that Ethan wouldn't let us go that easily. He was a man used to getting what he wanted, and he viewed Mila and me as his possessions, to be controlled and manipulated at will. I threw myself into gathering evidence against him, determined to build an airtight case. I spent long hours poring over financial records and phone logs, piecing together the puzzle of his deceit. Late one night, as Mila slept peacefully in her bed, I stumbled upon a goldmine of information. Ethan had been sloppy, leaving a trail of incriminating emails and text messages between himself and Jade. They spoke openly of their plans to flee the country together, using the embezzled funds to start a new life. My blood boiled as I read Jade's words, dripping with contempt for me and Mila. "I can't wait to be rid of that pathetic excuse for a wife," she wrote. "And as for the kid, we can always ship her off to boarding school. Out of sight, out of mind." I printed out the messages with shaking hands, my vision blurring with tears of rage. How could Ethan be so callous, so willing to abandon his own child? And Jade, what kind of woman could be so heartless, so eager to destroy a family for her own selfish gain? I added the printouts to my growing dossier of evidence, a sense of grim satisfaction filling me. Ethan thought he was untouchable, but he had no idea what I was capable of. I would make him pay for his sins, even if it meant burning down the life we had built together. The next day, I met with Jack, the private investigator who had been working tirelessly on my behalf. He greeted me with a smile, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. "I think we've got him, Zara," he said, handing me a thick folder. "This should be more than enough to nail the bastard to the wall." I flipped through the pages, my heart racing as I took in the damning evidence. Bank statements, surveillance photos, witness statements, it was all there, laid out in black and white. Ethan's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and I held the sledgehammer that would bring it all crashing down. I looked up at Jack, my eyes shining with determination. "It's time," I said, my voice steady and strong. "Let's take this son of a bitch down." Jack nodded, his face serious. "I'll start making the necessary arrangements. You just focus on keeping yourself and Mila safe. This is going to get ugly before it gets better." I knew he was right. Ethan wouldn't go down without a fight, and I had to be prepared for anything. But I also knew that I had the truth on my side, and the love of my daughter to keep me strong. As I left Jack's office, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Ethan had underestimated me for the last time, and now he would pay the price for his betrayal. The day had finally arrived. Ethan was set to leave for another one of his work trips, but this time I knew exactly where he was going. He and Jade had planned a romantic getaway, a chance to flaunt their illicit love in the face of everything Ethan had once held dear. I watched from the window as he loaded his suitcase into the trunk of his car, whistling a jaunty tune. He had no idea what was about to hit him, no inkling of the storm that was brewing on the horizon. As soon as he pulled out of the driveway, I sprang into action. Mila and I had been living out of suitcases for weeks, our belongings carefully packed and hidden away. Now it was time to put our plan into motion. We loaded our bags into my car, Mila chattering excitedly about our adventure. She had no idea the gravity of the situation, no understanding of the betrayal that had led us to this moment. All she knew was that we were going somewhere new, somewhere far away from the pain and heartache of the past few months. As we drove away from the house that had once been our home, I felt a sense of both sadness and relief. I was leaving behind everything I had ever known, but I was also breaking free from the chains that had held me down for so long. We arrived at our secret rental home just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Mila ran inside, eager to explore our new surroundings. I followed more slowly, my heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. I unpacked our belongings with a sense of finality, knowing that there was no turning back now. I placed the divorce papers and the evidence of Ethan's crimes on the kitchen table, a silent testament to the truth that had been hidden for so long. And then I waited. I knew it wouldn't be long before Ethan discovered our absence. before he realized that his carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. The phone rang just as I was putting Mila to bed, her little face peaceful in the soft glow of the nightlight. I answered it with a sense of calm, my voice steady and strong. "Zara, where the hell are you?" Ethan's voice was frantic, tinged with anger and fear. "I came home and everything was gone. What have you done?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've done what I had to do, Ethan. I've taken Mila and left. I know everything, the affair, the embezzlement, all of it. Did you really think you could keep it hidden forever?" There was a long pause, and then Ethan's voice came back, low and menacing. "You have no idea what you've done, Zara. I'll find you, and I'll make you pay for this. You and Mila belong to me, and I won't let you go without a fight." I laughed then, a harsh, bitter sound. "You're wrong, Ethan. Mila and I don't belong to anyone, least of all you. You've lost everything, and it's all your own doing. The divorce papers are waiting for you, along with all the evidence of your crimes. It's over, Ethan. You've lost." I hung up the phone before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline. I knew that the battle was far from over, that Ethan would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. But I also knew that I had the truth on my side, and the love of my daughter to keep me strong. I checked on Mila one last time before heading to bed myself, my mind whirling with the events of the day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles to overcome. But for now, I could rest easy, knowing that I had taken the first step towards a brighter future, a future free from the lies and betrayal of the past. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had engulfed my life. I woke early, my mind racing with the tasks that lay ahead. I had one more piece of the puzzle to put in place before I could truly break free from Ethan's grasp. I dressed quickly, leaving Mila in the care of my trusted friend and neighbor. She had been a lifeline throughout this ordeal, offering support and guidance when I needed it most. I knew that Mila would be safe with her, protected from the storm that was about to break. I drove to Ethan's parents' house with a sense of trepidation, my heart pounding in my chest. I had never been close with his family, but I knew that they needed to know the truth about their son. They deserved to know the man he had become, the monster that lurked beneath the surface. I rang the doorbell with shaking hands, my breath catching in my throat as Ethan's mother answered the door. She looked at me with surprise, her eyes widening as she took in my haggard appearance. "Zara, what are you doing here? Is everything all right?" I shook my head, my voice trembling as I spoke. "No, everything is not all right. I need to talk to you and your husband. It's about Ethan." She ushered me inside, her face etched with concern. Ethan's father was sitting in the living room reading the newspaper. He looked up as I entered, his brow furrowing in confusion. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. And then I began to speak. I told them everything, the affair, the embezzlement, the abuse. I showed them the evidence I had gathered, the proof of their son's betrayal. They listened in stunned silence, their faces growing paler with each passing moment. When I finished, Ethan's mother was openly weeping, her shoulders shaking with the force of her sobs. "I'm so sorry, Zara," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "We had no idea. We thought he was happy with you and Mila. We never imagined he could do something like this." Ethan's father stood up, his face hard with anger. "He's no son of mine," he said, his voice cold and unforgiving. "What he's done is unforgivable. We'll stand by you, Zara. Whatever you need, we'll be there for you and Mila." I felt a rush of relief wash over me, a sense of vindication that I had never known before. I had been so afraid that they would take Ethan's side, that they would blame me for the breakdown of our marriage. But they had seen the truth, and they had chosen to stand with me. I thanked them, my voice shaking with gratitude. And then I left, my heart lighter than it had been in months. When I returned home, I found Mila playing happily in the living room, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded around her. I scooped her up in my arms, holding her close as I breathed in the sweet scent of her hair. "Mommy, where did you go?" she asked, her little face scrunched up in confusion. "I had to take care of some grown-up things, baby," I said, my voice soft and soothing. "But everything is going to be okay now, I promise." Just then the phone rang, shattering the peaceful moment. I answered it with a sense of dread, knowing exactly who it would be. "Zara, what the hell have you done?" Ethan's voice was raw with anger, tinged with a hint of desperation. "My parents just called me, telling me that they're cutting me off, that they're taking your side in all of this. What did you say to them?" I felt a sense of calm wash over me, a sense of power that I had never known before. "I told them the truth, Ethan. The truth about who you really are. The truth about what you've done. And now they know." "Everyone knows. It's over, Ethan. You've lost." The divorce proceedings were a blur of paperwork and legal jargon, but through it all, I held my head high. I had the truth on my side, and the support of those who mattered most. Ethan's parents were true to their word, standing by me and Mila every step of the way. Ethan, on the other hand, was a shell of his former self. He had lost everything: his job, his reputation, his family. Jade had abandoned him as soon as the scandal broke, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions alone. I watched from across the courtroom as he sat slumped in his chair, his face gaunt and haunted. A part of me felt a flicker of pity for him, a remnant of the love I had once felt. But then I remembered all the pain he had caused, all the lies he had told, and my heart hardened once more. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. I was granted full custody of Mila, along with a generous settlement that would ensure our financial stability for years to come. Ethan was left with nothing, his once promising future reduced to ashes. As I walked out of the courthouse, Mila's hand clasped tightly in mine. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally over. I was free. The months that followed were a time of healing and growth. I threw myself into my studies, determined to build a better life for myself and my daughter. Mila thrived in her new school, making friends and discovering new passions. I watched her blossom before my eyes, marveling at the resilience and strength that she possessed. She was a fighter, just like her mother. But even as we moved forward, the specter of Ethan lingered in the background. He had taken to drinking heavily, drowning his sorrows in a bottle. His once charming face was now bloated and ruddy, his eyes bloodshot and vacant. One day he showed up at our door reeking of alcohol and desperation. "Please, Zara," he slurred, his words barely intelligible. "I need to see Mila. I need to make things right." I stared at him coldly, my heart a block of ice in my chest. "You lost the right to see Mila the moment you chose Jade over your family, the moment you decided to lie and cheat and steal. You're not the man I married, Ethan. You're not the father Mila deserves." He recoiled as if slapped, his eyes filling with tears. "I know I messed up, Zara. I know I hurt you and Mila, but please, give me another chance. I can change, I swear." I shook my head, my voice firm and unyielding. "It's too late for that, Ethan. You had your chance and you blew it. Mila and I are better off without you. Now I suggest you leave before I call the police." He stared at me for a long moment, his face a mask of anguish and regret. And then he turned and stumbled away. His shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him go, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. I had loved him once with all my heart. But that love had been tainted by his lies and betrayal, poisoned by his selfish actions. Now, I was free to love myself and my daughter, to build a life that was filled with joy and purpose. I had emerged from the darkness stronger and wiser, a phoenix rising from the ashes of my broken marriage. As I closed the door and turned back to Mila, I felt a sense of hope and possibility fill my heart. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. "Come on, baby," I said, scooping her up in a tight hug. "Let's go have some fun." And together we stepped out into the sunlight, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. We were survivors, Mila and I, and nothing could break us as long as we had each other.